Welcome to the Fantasy Throwdown Podcast, bringing you the latest in sports news, fantasy analysis, and opinions. Don't forget the hot takes. Can't have a sports show without hot takes these days. What about hot cakes, though? I want some hot cakes. Now, here's your host, ready to jump into the thick of things, Dwayne Callender.
Hello, and welcome to the show. Got a lot to talk about because we've got the championship finals for the AFC and NFC and the NFL. Gonna talk some college hoops as well because we had Duke take down Virginia. Also gotta get into a little bit of the Premier League, but first let's just start off with the absolute disaster that was the UFC debut on ESPN last night, because it was a weak card to begin with, which was part of the reason why I didn't feel like previewing it, and it lived up to be the unmitigated disaster that it was. So, to begin with, obviously coming into this, there was a lot of talk about the fact that Greg Hardy was signed to the UFC in the first place, and not only signed, but was actually going to be the co-main event of the evening. Again, this is Greg Hardy. He of 3 actual professional MMA fights co-headlining a UFC event. Granted, it's not a pay-per-view, it's just a UFC fight night, but at the same time, you're basically using Greg Hardy to promote a UFC event for the inaugural event on ESPN. It boggles my mind that this was actually considered a good idea by the powers that be at WME, or if it came from Dana White himself. A, Greg Hardy's not experienced. B, there's the whole Greg Hardy's a scumbag to begin with and beats on women. But hey, let's build an event around him when you're also featuring a woman who was also a victim of actual domestic violence on the exact same card. That's not a conflict of interest at all. I mean, you know, it was comical for it to even go down that way, but sure enough, they got Greg Hardy on the card, and Greg Hardy proceeds to gas himself out in the fight and gets himself disqualified for throwing an illegal knee. Yes, was he in a position to win the fight eventually? Possibly, but the guy was so gassed that he threw the illegal knee because he didn't realize what was going on, because, again, he was completely gassed and was just tired, so he was trying to get the guy out of the ring as soon as possible and got himself DQ'd for throwing an illegal knee. You know, again, just a mess, because that was a fight where it was supposed to be basically setting up Hardy to make this massive run in the UFC against tomato cans to build up his record, and then you sell a pay-per-view. So now he gets a loss on his record, and you still have all the negative publicity for, you know, hiring Greg Hardy and promoting him to the moon in the first place. So, bravo. So, as I mentioned before, you know, there was Rachel Ostovich, who made her UFC return after a domestic violence issue with her boyfriend at the time. She lost to Paige Van Zandt via armbar in the second round, I believe. But, you know, this was supposed to be the feel-good story, which unfortunately got completely overshadowed by the whole Greg Hardy circus that was going on with the UFC. But of course, the kicker of the night, the one that the UFC built their whole promotional ad campaign around with ESPN, featured the main event bout between champion versus champion, and I'm using air quotes, TJ Dillashaw, the bantamweight champion, versus Henry Cejudo, the featherweight champion, that I'm using with air quotes, because anyone who actually watched the Cejudo fight against Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson knows Cejudo did not win that belt. But besides that, you still have the fact that since that time, not only did Mighty Mouse not get his well-deserved automatic rematch after numerous years of defending the featherweight title, the UFC literally trades Mighty Mouse to get rid of him, because they were planning on closing down the featherweight division anyway, because Dana White really wasn't interested in the division. Basically, TJ Dillashaw was brought in to pretty much nuke the entire division by just blowing Cejudo out of the water completely, and by all rights and accounts, Dillashaw should have been able to do so. But one of the things that I was incredibly fearful of this fight was, Dillashaw wasn't nearly as big of a favorite by Vegas standards as I would have expected, and the line really didn't jump. Basically, the entire lead up to this fight was Dillashaw trash talking how much he was going to embarrass Cejudo and just smoke him. Anyone who's followed TJ Dillashaw's career knows that while he's extremely talented, he's also a complete and utter meathead. So when he gets overly confident, he usually gets his ass handed to him. Hence the whole issue with his loss to Dominic Cruz when he lost the bantamweight title to begin with. You know, the biggest thing that I saw out of all this is the fact that I was fearful of the fact that Dillashaw would come into this way too overconfident and get himself into way too much trouble. Little did I know that while I'm sitting with my bum knee, stuck watching some of these sporting events last night, that sure enough, TJ, like the meathead he is, walks into not one, not two, but 3 straight right hits to his skull from Cejudo and gets his ass handed to him in less than 30 seconds. Because while the fight was stopped a little bit early by the referee, let's be perfectly honest, it was not a terrible stoppage. Based off of the fact that Kevin McDonald, the referee, basically just saw TJ just try to go for a single leg, but not do a whole lot else, at which point Cejudo kept teeing off on TJ. So yes, we got a main event bout around a guy who the UFC was basically using in all their promotional footage with ESPN to build up as the next big thing, along with Conor McGregor and John Jones, and he gets his ass kicked in less than a minute. Spectacular results. But the only thing that could top the embarrassment of this event going down the way it ended up going down in the main event was the post-fight reaction of TJ Dillashaw, which was actually longer in terms of a whining session than the actual fight itself. I'm going to play the clip right now because this is so ridiculous of a whine fest that I just had to play it for the folks like you listening to the podcast.
Here with TJ Dillashaw, we're fresh off of UFC Fight Night at Barclays Center on Saturday night. And TJ, thank you for coming and speaking to us. First off, is this something you wanted to do? Did you want to come out and address the media after the loss?
Sure, man. I mean, it's tough when it's taken from you, you know, so you got to at least, you know, win or lose, you got to be a good sport, you know. Tonight was very unfortunate, but you don't stop a title fight like that. You don't rob 12 weeks of my work, you know. Congratulations to the guy. I got respect for him. I'm happy for him for winning, but look, it's not the way it goes down, man. I've worked 12 weeks to push for this and for my legacy, and for me to hardly get clipped behind my ear, a single leg scrambling, and for you to stop the scramble for not only a world title fight but a champ versus champ fight, it's uncalled for, man. It's uncalled for, and that ref better hope I don't see him.
in that moment, I mean, are you only?
Yeah, great job threatening a ref. It's real smart.
Hey, I'm working here. I'm working. Does that come through your mind at all?
Yeah, I heard him say, "Show me something." I said, "I'm good," and I went on a single leg. He said, "Show me something, Dillashaw. I'm good. I'm on a single leg." What the? What me to do?
Did not happen.
Your reaction now to this, is it something that you appeal? Is it something that you speak to the New York Commission? Is there anything that you can do if once you feel a championship fight has been stopped too early?
And I don't know. I don't know, man. I've never even thought about that before. I guess that's something I got to talk with my management about, and this isn't over. I want this again. You don't take this work from me like that, you know? I mean, ESPN seeing how hard I worked for the last 12 weeks, the things I've done, the sacrifices I've made. I want this again. It shouldn't stop this way.
Do you and your team ever, you know, look at the commission record and say, did you care? Did you know who was refereeing your title fight tonight? And did you have it?
This was absolutely comical.
I never looked into it. I've never seen the guy before. I don't know. I guess I don't pay attention enough.
What do you
Clearly.
now, TJ?
We do it at the end. We do it at 25s, too.
Why? He already beat you.
I worked too hard for it to be robbed. Like, I mean, man, like, I'm a good loser.
Clearly.
But I've had so many losses in my career now, 3 of them, that have been taken from me. And those ones are
All lost clean.
the ones that really dig deep.
Last thing, can you just put it into words? How hurt were you in that moment? If anybody who's like, yeah, TJ, maybe you had a leg, but you looked really bad, and the referee needs to step in, and he's doing it for your safety. How hurt were you in that moment?
Not hurt. I got
Bullshit.
in the ear with the right hand. Hardly, you can watch it. Hardly get clipped. I know exactly what happened. I was there the entire time. Yeah, sure. I'm gonna. None of the grown man's gonna be pushing you to the ground trying to hit you at the same time. Like, of course you're gonna be a little bit off balance. But I'm in a single leg.
Real impressive.
I mean, it's pretty more ridiculous that I'm more experienced than the ref that's out there reffing me.
Yep. Uh-huh. So, there you have it. Lots of whining, and he threatened the referee. Brilliant move, TJ. Just brilliant. So, there you have it, folks. A guy who basically takes no admission of defeat in his loss and threatens the referee. Great guy to build your entire promotion around. Honestly, I would say I feel bad for the UFC, but they deserve everything they're getting at the moment. So I'll leave it there. I can have some more UFC talk another time, but let's get right down to it with some of the college basketball that went on yesterday. Duke ends the undefeated run by Virginia, beats them in Cameron, 72-70. I'll be honest, this one realistically was one of those games where I kind of looked at it from the standpoint of, you know, it was a game that, you know, I thought Virginia played well enough to win for the most part, except for the fact that Duke's got Zion Williamson and RJ Barrett. And that's basically what it came down to. Virginia produces NBA players, but the problem is that Duke has legit NBA superstars of the future in Zion Williamson and RJ Barrett. There's just no getting around it. Like, Zion Williamson is a man among boys. It's not close. Basically, Williamson puts up 27, Barrett puts up 22. But the problem is the fact that Williamson is so strong that he can do whatever he wants. Like, there's a reason why people describe him as a baby LeBron, because, you know, he's got LeBron's physical physique and moves like a cat. It's ridiculous that a man can be that already built under the age of 22. He's not even Zion Williamson. I still shudder to think, because, like, typically with his body size, like, he's actually, I still think he's bigger than LeBron. When LeBron came into the league, as crazy as that sounds, like, at age 18, Zion Williamson is, like, more swole than LeBron. And LeBron was a monster in his rookie year. Like, that's how crazy Zion Williamson is. So, again, for those of you who don't pay attention to college basketball until the March Madness tournament in March, obviously, Duke's really good. Duke should win the title. I don't see anyone beating Duke unless Duke just has an absolutely terrible game. I know for the Duke haters that's like a fate worse than death, but, you know, I don't really see any other scenario where this plays out where Duke doesn't win. That's how good Duke is in terms of talent level. They're that much better than everyone else. It's not even close. So even if you play your A game, if you're Virginia, 9 times out of 10, you're still going to lose that matchup against Duke. Even if it's a neutral site, I don't see them winning. Like, Virginia played about as well as they can play, and they were still down double digits with 2 minutes to go. So, that's college basketball for you. The reason why I don't talk that much college basketball this year is because I think it's a foregone conclusion, but we'll see how it goes in March. But it's tough. It's really tough. watching college basketball and not saying that this is kind of pointless because Duke's going to win it. Anyway, talking a little college basketball. In the NBA yesterday, I just saw further dysfunction from the 76ers. Trust the process, my ass. The bottom line is the Philadelphia 76ers have a severe problem. And the problem is Ben Simmons can't shoot. Ben Simmons can't shoot. Markelle Fultz is MIA and still can't shoot either. You got two high picks that can't shoot. Joel Embiid's a beast, but he's injury prone. And again, he got banged up the other day on Thursday night. Shouldn't have played. Gets into it with Russell Westbrook, charging into him when he could have gotten himself further injured. Like, Embiid was a moron yesterday because it was a flagrant foul on Russell Westbrook that the refs didn't call on him. And Russ did have a reason to be really pissed off at Embiid for going after him that way. It was reckless by Embiid. Not only reckless and dangerous to Westbrook, but it was dangerous to Embiid himself. He really could have gotten himself hurt going after him like that. But, the problem is that the 76ers management coddles these players. Like, Embiid is not held to task. You got Jimmy Butler doing whatever he wants to do because that's what Jimmy Butler does. Being a great player, but being a pain in the ass all along the way. You got Ben Simmons who can't shoot. Everyone knows he can't shoot, so that anytime you get into crunch time, like yesterday, you got a game where they're down 2. Simmons drives down the baseline, gets caught because no one's biting on the fact that he's going to pull up and take a jumper, so he dribbles it right back out and feeds the defender to Jimmy Butler so that Jimmy Butler has to try to hit a game-winning three-pointer over 2 guys because Ben Simmons led his defender back to it. Because what defender is really going to be afraid of Ben Simmons' jump shot? You play for the drive, and you give him space to take the jump shot. Ben Simmons does not have the confidence to hit a jump shot, so he's going to revert to either drive to the baseline or hand it off to someone else. He handed it off to Jimmy Butler, and it was a terrible shot selection because Jimmy Butler had no other chance to do with less than a second left. Like, Ben Simmons gave him no option other than to jack up a 3. I don't know what the 76ers expect out of the playoffs, but come time when they actually have to play Boston or Toronto, they're going to force Ben Simmons to try to shoot the ball in crunch time. And the 76ers better have an answer because otherwise they're going to go home. There's no way they're winning a 7-game series against a competently coached team that you have between Toronto and Boston. And even if they go up against a team like the Pacers, do you think the Pacers are going to let Ben Simmons beat them going to the baseline and dunking on them? No, they're going to force him to take jump shots. The Eastern Conference is not that bad this year. Compared to most years, the Eastern Conference is not actually that bad. The teams have actually gotten better. Like, the middle part of the Eastern Conference has actually gotten a little stronger. So, no, the 76ers cannot coast their way through the regular season and then hope that they can just figure it out come playoff time. They actually have to work on some of their deficiencies right now. But be that as it may, we'll see how it continues on. But I did not like what I saw out of the 76ers last night. And, to be perfectly honest, it's going to come to a head sooner than later because, the more they try to drag that out, the more it's going to blow up in their face because they cannot figure out a way of getting themselves into a better spot as a team. It's just not working with the 76ers. They're winning enough, but they're not actually winning the games that they need to win. And that's the biggest problem with the squad. They actually have to figure out a better way of going about it because as it stands, they are easily going to get themselves knocked out of the playoffs. It's not close. It's really not that close at all. Meanwhile, in other NBA news, James Harden is still unstoppable given the rule changes as he goes off for another 40-plus point barrage as the Rockets take down the Lakers 138-134 in OT last night. What else is there to say? You can blame the rules, you can blame the flopping, but the fact of the matter is James Harden has exploited the rules, and you know what? If it is what it is. He is within the rule book. He's doing everything he's supposed to be doing, and he's crushing everyone. So if you don't like it, get the NBA to change the rules again to allow the hand checking, because that's really the only thing that's going to stop James Harden at this point. Unless you're going to throw a double team and let his teammates just score at will, one-on-one coverage against Harden is not a viable option, to be honest, the way he's playing right now. Maybe he runs out of gas, maybe he gets tired, but right now he is just owning everyone. It doesn't really matter who he's up against, because he's been doing it against everybody. Nothing's changing depending on the defensive matchup. It's just it's a non-starter. He's bringing it to everybody. So there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He's the front runner for MVP right now. All right, so let's get right down to it. Talk to UFC. We got some basketball out of the way. Let's get into the football. I've been saying it before. I'll say it again. In terms of the betting, I would stay away from the Pats-Chiefs game, to be honest, unless you're fully prepared to bet on the Pats. Because the way I see it, the second time around, New England usually gets better against teams, not worse. And the problem I have with this Chiefs team is that in a coaching matchup, I have far more confidence in New England being able to shut down the Chiefs offense than the Chiefs being able to completely disrupt New England. And yes, I know the Chiefs defense plays better at home, but my fear for this New England Kansas City game is the fact that this game goes well under, and that it turns into a tactical battle between the Patriots and the Chiefs, because I will always trust Brady and Belichick in a tight-knit game where you need to execute very minor details in order to keep drives alive and just grind down the clock than I have any confidence in an Andy Reid-led team. It's just a simple fact of the matter. So if you're not prepared to bet your money on New England, stay away from the game. I'm telling you, because I've seen all these expert picks go Chiefs -3, and it's over 60%. And that's never a good trend. I'll be perfectly honest. The betting, the total bets are coming out on the Chiefs around that range where 60. It's right now. As of this morning, it's around 55, and it seems like it's inching up, because earlier in the week it was a lot more even. So now it seems like more people are as Joe Public gets more active into betting as the course of the weekend goes on, more bets are coming in on the Chiefs. But the total money wagered on the game is still even. Anytime I see that tells me that most of the sharp money, meaning the expert bettors that bet the most money, are betting New England, and that it's the casual fans that are betting on the Chiefs in unison, and I just don't like it. I do not like this at all. It's like I'm seeing bets come in on the Chiefs. I don't like where this is trending. To me, this screams New England figures out a way of slowing down Kansas City. I don't think they shut them down completely, but I do think they can give Patrick Mahomes fits. And believe me, I've been thumping the case for Mahomes for MVP the entire way through. This changes nothing about that. He is the MVP. The problem I have with New England against Casey is the fact that they've already seen him before. Anytime New England gets a chance to see you, it's never a good thing. So the fact that they were able to shut him down for the first half last go around, and he was able to figure it out second half, that's encouraging. But I think New England takes more lessons from what he was able to do against them in the second half than anything else. So long story short, I think it's going to have to come down to a case of, Patrick Mahomes is going to have to find something special to do. But at the same time, the Chiefs have got to be disciplined. Because what I think the Pats are going to do well is that they're going to go small and try to use the speed rush against Kansas City and disrupt their rhythm. So that means you're going to have more undersized backs in there using different blitz combinations to try to trip up Mahomes. So usually to counter that, you want to go power formation and actually run it down their throat. So this is one of those where I want the Chiefs to actually say, we're going to run the football early and not pass. I would rather them not drop back with Mahomes so much and just kind of focus on the run. Because to me, if they can go forward with a strategy of limiting the amount of, and I know they don't want to do this because this is New England's MO, but you got to flip the script on New England. New England's not going to expect them to grind it out on the run game either. So to me, if you go unexpected and catch New England off guard, that's the best way of beating New England. You kind of have to go the way that Philly went with it by flipping the script on them and doing things that they're not expecting you to do. That's the best way you can actually beat the Patriots, is by forcing them into situations where they're like kind of wondering, oh, wait a second, how do we game plan this incorrectly? You have to change the narrative where you're actually going contrary to what they were expecting you to do. The Pats are going to be expecting Mahomes to drop back multiple times and just to try to throw the ball all over the place. And they try to go that route. I fear for Kansas City getting stalled, and because I think New England is expecting, every once in a while Mahomes going to uncork one, and yeah, he'll hit a home run shot. But at the same time, I still think that New England's willing to accept that from time to time because overall, they know they're going to shut them down with the speed rush. So that's my fear for Kansas City. I think Kansas City's got to be able to has got to be able to do everything they can to kind of keep New England off balance in terms of what they're going to try to approach them with. And my biggest thing with New England is I just think that they're going to try to take Kelsey out of the game, and for the most part, by trying to use the speed rush on him, they keep Tyreek Hill out of the game because they won't allow Mahomes to get enough time to throw the ball deep down the field. I also think the other guy you got to look out for in this game is Sammy Watkins. Shockingly, Sammy Watkins is healthy for this game. I couldn't believe it when I saw the injury report this morning that Watkins has absolutely 0 injury designations, but besides Tyreek Hill, Sammy Watkins can get down the field and damage New England. I mean, that's where you hurt New England is with speed. So if you can get them to respect the run and then pop one over the top, that's how you can hurt New England with the play action. So my perspective, if Kansas City is going to win this game, they're going to have to do it with being disciplined and then take their shots down the field because that's the way they can best hurt New England, but they gotta be disciplined first. If they try to force the issue by throwing the ball over the place, it's gonna be rough starting out. That's just the way I kind of look at this game from the outset. But if I was to bet on this one, which I'm not looking forward to, I'm taking New England here +3. To me, this one screams New England's gonna figure out a way of winning this one, whether anyone likes it or not. They'll be back in the Super Bowl again for Super Bowl 53. So that's the way I see the AFC going. As far as the NFC goes, this one's interesting because I like the Saints to win, but I don't really trust the Saints to cover 3.5. So I see this being a really close game, even though, and I think it's going to be the flip side of what happened last week against Philly. I think the Saints get off to a good start this week, and then the Rams actually catch on, because I think the biggest issue for the Rams is the fact that their run game probably isn't going to take off early on in the game. I think they'll struggle just with the way the Saints' run defense works. But I do think without Sheldon Rankins, who basically is done for the year and might be done past training camp next year, which is a big loss for the Saints, with that Achilles injury. I just think that the Rams, if they stay patient with the run and the play action, will eventually get to the Saints' defense. The thing is that the Saints, if the Saints can put points on the board early and actually get touchdowns, they can put this game away early. I'm just not sure, just from what I saw from Drew Brees last week. I kind of think, part of me feels as though Drew Brees' arm is getting tired, and no one wants to say it in the media because everyone wants to be Drew Brees' friend, but I'm just saying it. It's like, as much as I love Drew Brees, like, the zip on the ball really wasn't there last week, so I kind of need to see a little bit more from Brees before I'm fully committing to the Saints covering that spread. So with a 3.5 spread, I got to take the Rams here because even though I don't think they're going to win the game, I think they keep it close enough where the Saints have to rely on the last second field goal from Will Lutz to win the game. It's just one of those where, I don't really feel comfortable betting the Saints outright. I feel more comfortable betting New England outright than I do the Saints outright, if that makes any sense. Even though the Saints are the home team, I don't really feel that comfortable betting on the Saints outright. I'll do it for picks pools, but if it's a spread pick, I'm taking the Rams plus 3.5. It's just one of those where I feel this one's going to be razor thin. I really, really do not feel comfortable taking the Saints to cover that line sufficiently. I just don't have it in me. I really don't. That's my biggest concern with this game, is that I could easily see this game coming down to a field goal at the end, and that's it. And the Rams will cover it even if they lose the game. So, and I'll say this one other bit too. The Rams, and because I'm going to get into this for the DFS piece, I don't think the Rams are doing this dual running back by committee with Anderson and Gurley because they want to preserve Todd Gurley. I do think Todd Gurley has a legitimate injury that the Rams are fearful that if they use him in between the tackles on some of these plays, that he's going to aggravate it further and he's going to be done for the playoffs. I think that's the biggest issue. Now, I could be wrong, but to me, Gurley hasn't looked like Gurley, even in the runs that he did have against Dallas. Like, Gurley looks banged up. So, I don't know what's actually in the tank for Gurley, but my biggest concern is playing Gurley in DFS because Gurley is still priced up like he's Todd Gurley, and he's not. So, that's my biggest fear right now, is that the amount of money on a 2-game slate paying up for Todd Gurley doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I wouldn't recommend anyone doing it for DFS purposes, But from my perspective, this is an interesting case of, from a DFS slate standpoint, I could see both of these games going under, and I'm not even sure who to pick from a offensive standpoint because, again, C.J. Anderson I think is a factor that no one's really talking about. I think C.J. Anderson could easily vulture a touchdown from Gurley because, like I said, I don't think the Rams are all that comfortable running Gurley in between the tackles. And if it comes to a goal line situation and there are a bunch of guys that are going to be meeting him at the line, are the Rams willing to risk that? I'm not entirely sure. Now, in terms of guys that I know have performed well in the playoffs and can step up, I like Brandon Cooks. I like Michael Thomas because basically if Michael Thomas doesn't have a good day, the Saints are really going to struggle in the passing game. So it's like if you're playing Drew Brees in DFS, you have to have Michael Thomas. There's no getting around it. It's like, it's the required play if you're playing Drew Brees is to stack him with Michael Thomas because if you don't, it's an idiotic play to play Drew Brees without Michael Thomas. Even with Ted Ginn back in the mix, Michael Thomas is still Drew Brees' number one option that he's going to go to 75% of the time. So he's going to see the lion's share of targets. So it doesn't make any sense doing it otherwise. So in terms of the DFS plays, I really want to say that maybe New England gets Gronk involved, but I don't know. it's really hard for me to make a case for a lot of these guys in the DFS slate because I could see these games going a couple of different ways, but I don't really have a great feel for how New England's going to produce points. Same way as I don't know where the points are going to come from for KC because of how New England may attack the KC offense. I could see New England shutting down Kelsey just to focus their efforts on making Mahomes try to beat him with home run throws by taking away the middle of the field with Kelsey. So, again, there are enough situations where I could see these DFS games going a whole number of ways, but at the end of the day, I just think that, realistically, I'm probably going to go with the likes of Brady and maybe Mahomes as my QB. I don't like Breeze necessarily, and I'm not big on Goff either. Again, with it just being a 2-game slate, it's hard to kind of make. You have to kind of make judgment calls with some of these players. So, I can get the only reason why I would get behind Goff would be as if you're trying to save money for other players, but with the pricing on some of these players, you can fit pretty much everyone in. It's just like figuring out like how you want to go about it. So, I don't like Ingram at all. I think you play Kamara only if you're playing the Saints backfield. I do think CJ Anderson is a legitimate threat on the Rams side because, as I said, I don't think Gurley's healthy. So I do think CJ Anderson's a definite play there if you don't want to play Gurley. And like I said, I'm going to be underweight on Gurley because I don't think he's healthy. And, I don't want to pay up that much and have him not put up the numbers to justify the price tag you're definitely going to be paying with him. That's the problem. So it's a tricky mess here because, again, I can see definite scenarios where you need to have some luck on your side if you're gonna have a decent day at the office. And my fear is that it's gonna be a low scoring game, so I don't know where the points are gonna come from, and that's a very fearful place to be in for like a couple of championship games if you don't know where the points are going to come from. So it could easily swing in a couple of different directions. So like I said, I don't really have a great feel for these games, and that terrifies me quite a bit. So I'll leave it there, but it could very easily swing in an entirely different direction. It's just that I don't have a great feel for most of these teams. Because I can easily see scenarios where teams that should have been able to put up points just didn't get it done, and it's as simple as that. It's like some of these games could easily go in an entirely different direction, and there's no way to course correct. So, again, if you're gonna play DFS today, you gotta stack one game or the other, and hope for the best. But again, it's more along the lines of if Michael Thomas has a bad day, Drew Brees is gonna have a bad day. It's almost impossible for Drew Brees to have a good day throwing the football if Michael Thomas has a bad day. So I'm just being honest here, folks. So I don't have a great feeling for some of these games, and it could easily go into a situation where some of these games get real ugly. So we'll see how it goes, but I'm very curious to see how everything plays out because it very easily could be a scenario where you've got the Patriots playing New Orleans in the Super Bowl, but it's painful championship games that we're watching today. because, like I said, I don't see the over hitting in either game. That's just me, but we'll see how it all plays out at the end of the day. But keep your eyes peeled for the games today, and we'll see what we come up with. But hopefully we get some entertaining matchups here overall. That's always the goal at the end of this, is to be thoroughly entertained by the game. So have a good one, everyone, and we will check back to see the aftermath of everything that transpires today. So have a good one.